There's an entirely new way to edit video using text-based video editing. We also have new asset libraries, we have new device frames, something called cursor path animations, which is very cool for content creators, new blended effects and transitions. Oh, there is a lot of new stuff in Camtasia 2022. You're going to be glad you're here because I'm going to share it with you today on Audiate. Steve Dotto here. How the heck you doing this fine day? And today on Audiate, we're going to take our first look at Camtasia 2022. I was fortunate enough to get early access and have spent a couple of weeks playing with the software, and I'm going to share with you what I've discovered, the good and the better, as far as there's some very cool new features in Camtasia 2022. But first off, I have two disclaimers before we dive into things today. First of all, this is a sponsored video. We partner with the folks at TechSmith, and so I have to thank them very much for sponsoring this particular video. Second thing is, I need you to recognize that I am going to be presenting Camtasia 2022 from the position of a content creator, a person who creates tutorial videos, training videos, YouTube videos. We're going to be looking at it as a screencasting tool for creating that sort of video. We're not looking at it as a movie editing tool or a television editing tool or a high-end video editor. It's specifically, I'm going to be looking at features as they relate to creating tutorial videos, training videos, screencasts, YouTube tutorials, that sort of content. Now, there's a lot to cover, and if you want to jump ahead at any point to see one feature that you're most interested in, I've got a list of them all here, and they will be in the description below as well, so that you can jump ahead if you want to take a look at any specific topic. But we're going to begin with something which is also brand new, and that is the new text-based editing capabilities that is built into Camtasia. Actually, it's a combination of Camtasia and TechSmith's audio editing tool called Audiate, which is a text-based audio editing tool which podcasters have been using for quite some time. But now we see an integration coming across, and this is a little bit challenging to showcase, because this is really the first case in my life where we're going to be taking a look at how we create video, how we edit video, and we're going to be moving away from a timeline-based editor as our main editing, looking at the waveform of audio and the video and doing visual editing. And instead, we are going to look at being able to edit video based on the words that are spoken, based on the text, and being able to do edits where you trim information out, where you remove pauses and you remove ums and ahs, and that sort of almost podcast type editing. But we're going to be doing it to video, and the results are going to carry back through to the video track. It's very exciting, and it's a little bit complex. And the biggest thing, though, is it requires us to reevaluate or to reimagine how we edit video for this sort of content creation. And I got to tell you, I've been doing this for a little while now, and I'm not there yet. I haven't figured out exactly what the workflow is. I know that there's going to be a great workflow that comes out of it. I'm excited about what it brings to the table, and just figuring out how we're going to leverage it. That's going to be an exciting thing that we're going to be looking at over the next couple of months as we dive into this technology more. But enough of that. Let's take a look at how it all works. So here's the basic concept for how text-based video editing works. We record our video and import our video into Camtasia, into our video editing package as per normal. We can do screencast recording, we can import video from a variety of different sources, and then we can start to edit it on the timeline. But once we put it on the timeline, instead of doing our normal editing where we're highlighting areas of the video and we're trimming and we're adding transitions and we're scaling the size of graphics and images within it, instead of that sort of timeline-based editing, what we can do is we can lock the timeline in place. We can lock the video in place inside of Camtasia, and we can export the video file that we're working on, or the video segment that we're working on, the timeline that we're working on. We can export that into Audiate, TechSmith's text-based audio editing tool. And once it's locked in Camtasia, it then is brought into Audiate, where Audiate, first of all, transcribes the video so that we can see the text, we can see what's spoken in the video, and then we have an interactive editor, much like a word processor, where we can highlight text, we can delete it, we can remove pauses, we can chop up the video and edit it down for length and for content. Then when we save it, it will re-export those edits back onto our timeline, and all of the video that's accompanying those audio edits will be truncated and will be chopped accordingly. So we can take a large rambling video and we can edit it for brevity and for clarity, re-export it back into TechSmith, and now we've got basically a rough cut edit of our video done for us, and from there we can start adding polishing treatment to it. Let me show you how it all works. Okay, let's get started with text-based video editing. Now, in order to make this work, you need two pieces. You need to have TechSmith's Camtasia 2022, and you need TechSmith's audio editing tool. You need access to a license to Audiate, and details for that will be in the description below. But if you have both of those available to you, then you can follow this particular process. Now, the video editing inside of Camtasia feels the exact same. Here is Camtasia 2022, and any users of Camtasia will look at the screen and go, "Oh, it doesn't look very different, Steve." That's because it looks pretty much identical. All of the new features are kind of hidden inside of different menus. But let's get started. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a quick little demo. Watch. It's a minute long, but you'll see there's a variety of different mistakes in it that you're going to want to edit out. So let's have a quick boo. So here we see the new Gmail. So here we see the new Gmail interface. We've got a new sidebar down the side, which gives us full access to chat, to Spaces, to Google Meet. We've got our inbox, which has access to all of our normal Gmail functions. And then we've got the sidebar at the right-hand side, which will allow under Google Keep. We can jump in and access our account immediately from this menu. Now, you can also add other applications through the Google, what's it called? Now, you can also add, okay, I'm going to pause it now here. There it is. So typically speaking, this is how I end up recording a demo, is I blast away through the content and I forget the name of something partway through, and I have to kind of pause and remember it. Now, I could either edit this just on the timeline where I could trim it up and I could make myself sound a little bit more intelligent. I could have stopped and re-recorded the whole thing, which I probably would have done. Frankly, this is a bit of a lame demo, but it's typical of what happens. You make a little bobble, you make a mistake, you repeat yourself, you say something, you have a slight hesitation, and that's typically what happens when you're recording video, and we want to clean up that in editing. Now, in traditional editing, I would go through and I would look at this waveform and I would look at the video and I would highlight different areas and I would trim the video and cut the video and I would chop and dice. But I have to listen to each segment, then determine where the mistake was made and determine exactly what it is I want to edit out. So if I just want to edit out a stumble of a word, I have to isolate that exact word here in the waveform before I can edit it out. So it's a laborious process. It's one that we're very comfortable with. We do it all the time, and it's second nature to anybody who's editing video. But it is a time-consuming process. All of that changes when we take a look at text-based audio editing. So here's the process. I'm going to take the audio line here. Now, this is a minute worth of audio. I'm going to right-click my mouse, and when I right-click my mouse, I've got this new option in TechSmith Camtasia 2022. Edit in Audiate. I click on that, and now a process happens. First of all, that Camtasia is going to save the existing file of Camtasia that I'm working on, because what happens is we can only have one file that we're editing, or one instance that we're editing. So they're going to lock down Camtasia so I can't accidentally jump into Camtasia and edit it. They're going to take this video file now, and they're going to import it into Audiate, and you can see Audiate is right now going through and it's transcribing the words that I said into an editable interface. And anybody who's edited a podcast through text-based audio editing will recognize this. If you haven't done that yet, this will be brand new to you, but this is basically a word processing for audio. Once we've imported the video or the audio script here into Audiate, I can highlight it just like I would with a word processor, and I can delete, I can cut, I can find dead air space, and I can delete that. I can go through and I can edit this as though it was a word processor. So we'll take a look right at the beginning. You can see here. So we see here the new Gmail. So we see here the new Gmail interface. Yeah, so what I did is I started over again and I repeated myself. And you see this one here? This is a hesitation. You can listen to anything just by clicking on it and listening. It's so here, right? So I can just delete that if I wanted. So you just highlight it here. You can click on it and you can just delete it. And now if we listen to the whole thing, the will be gone. Gmail. So here we see, now there's a slight pause between the two as well. And so you can go through and you can find those little dead air spaces and close them down as well. But in this particular case, I repeated myself twice. Here we see the new email, here we see the new Gmail. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take and I'm going to edit all of that out. Oops, grab there. I'm going to edit all of that out and hit delete. And now we're going to start right with this part here. Here we see the new Gmail interface. Now, when I clicked on it, I accidentally opened up the timeline, the visual editor as well. So we can actually see the waveform editor as well. And you can edit either in text in this particular instance, or you can also edit down in the waveform. You can click inside of the waveform editor, right click your mouse, and that will bring you up an editing window, which will allow you to trim. And so if you want to cut out any of the audio kind of in a traditional mode, you can do this here as well. And I can just delete that, and I've tightened that up. Now, the key here though, to recognize is while I'm doing this editing just on the audio, the file is reflecting all of my changes back in the original video file. So when I'm finished this, and I export this file back into Camtasia, all of these edits are going to be in the video track, not just in the audio track of the video. Does that make sense? So in other words, I'm actually editing the video here as we go. Now they've got actually quite a few really very cool tools here. We can see that it'll go through and it will find hesitations and it will silence hesitation. So when you have little pauses, etc., in your delivery, it will find those and it will tighten things up. But more importantly is kind of this broad scale editing. So if you remember, as I read through it, there's this whole area here where actually we can listen to it. Google Keep, we can jump in and access our account immediately from this menu. Now, you can also add, see, I had a long pause. You can also add other, and then remember I made the mistake and then I had this long pause while I couldn't remember the name. And then I picked it up here again. You can also add, so this here, I can take this and highlight this all the way up to here, and I'll delete that. And let's listen. Menu. Now, you can also add other applications through the Google Workplace Marketplace, which gives you, okay, so that's perfect. So now what we've done is we've taken that 1 minute video and we've edited it down to 39 seconds because of the mistakes that I made in the pauses and my repeating myself. Once you've edited, and this could be an hour video, this doesn't have to be just a little 1 minute clip. That's just so that I can show it to you here in a reasonable amount of time. Once that's done, we click here on export and the magic begins. Export to Camtasia. Now it's going to ask us if we want to edit the video that's on the timeline because it's non-destructive editing. So we can either edit the video that's on the timeline or we can edit the source video, the source media that's in our library. I'm going to edit it on the timeline, export it, save, and now Audiate saves this file because again, we can only have one file. So we're going to save this file and then it is going to export this output back into Camtasia, unlock Camtasia, and now when we look at this file here, you see these stitches, this is where trimming occurred. So now if we just watch the last little bit, this when I really made the mistake here, if we watch that here, this menu. Now, you can also add other applications. Now, this is non-destructive editing. We can go back, we can change it, we can undo it, we can unstitch it so that we could actually recover a little piece of it inside. It's, as I say, I'm really still getting my head around all of the different ways that you can use this as a workflow. But I'm excited about it. This could be a real game changer as far as how much time it takes us to edit video and also the confidence that you have when you're recording. The fact that you know that you're going to be able to see the words and you're going to be able to edit it quickly as opposed to having work your way through looking at the waveform, hoping that you're catching everything and then laboriously watching it play each time. Because the key, I mean, one of the things that we have to do when we're doing any video editing is we have to watch it multiple times. Every time we make an edit, we have to watch it again, that where we edited, and make sure that it was done right. Here we can export it. We can do the text-based editing for length. We can bring it back in, and now we can start to add treatments to it. Now we can start to clean it up, and we can start to polish the video and make it ready for prime time much more quickly, and I think much more effectively. This text-based video editing is going to take you a little bit of time to get your head around. For me, when I first heard about it, I kind of went, oh. And then I started to play with it, and I went, oh. And then I started to use it, and I went, oh. That's the process that you're going to go through as you look over text-based audio and video editing. And that's the number one, I think it's the number one feature inside of Camtasia. There is some more cool stuff to come, so let's get into the assets now. Now let's take a look at the new libraries of assets that are included in Camtasia 2022. Now, within every shipping version of Camtasia are libraries. Now, libraries are collections of graphics. Now, they can be preloaded with Camtasia. You get a stock set with them, and you can also create your own assets. And these are repeating things that you use over and over again in your videos. For example, I've got a library here of all of my YouTube, what I call YouTube assets. The YouTube assets are all the little things that I've created that I use inside of these YouTube videos, and you'll recognize them if you take a look here. For example, here's the cover transition that we've used already several times in this video. I created this to create a quick transition from one thought to another, and you recognize it. You see exactly there? You've seen me use it. Now, the cool thing about this is I just drag it in and use it, and I can edit the text in it by making any changes, because these are all customizable. As far as their applications. You can change colors, you can change text, but you've got the basic structure of whatever the asset is that you're going to use. So we can create our own, but it's so much better if somebody else creates better quality ones than we can do. And oh my gosh, they have just released a wonderful collection of new transitions here inside of Camtasia 2022. Now, I probably spent 3 or 4 hours playing with these and just getting excited about figuring out different ways to use them. So I'm just going to quickly go through the highlights for you right now so that you can get an idea for what the new assets are. And let's start with it. When you open up the asset library, the first thing you see is audio. And this is clip audio, things like music beds and sound effects. So that's nice, but it's hardly earth-shaking. When we go into the callouts, we start to see some of the kind of exciting new features that they've added. For example, counters. I can't tell you many times I've gone out and searched on the web to get countdown timers to use, and it takes quite a bit of time to put those together. Take a look at these. They've got things like countdown timestamps. You just grab it, drag it out, and you see it here on the timeline. And when we hit play, we see that it counts down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Isn't that great? You can change the color of it. You can change the size. You can position it wherever you want. But I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Steve, that's great, except what if you want to count down from 20 seconds? How do you do that? There's no place here to program it. It's so easy, it's ridiculous. Let's set this to 0, and let's drag this out. What you do is you just drag out on the timeline the length that you want, and then the countdown timer sets based on that. So it's completely dynamic, and you can change the time of any of these different timers, and you can quickly apply them to your videos. This is the sort of thing that really makes a difference for content creators. Next up, I want to show you the indicators, and they really open my eyes to some new opportunities for creating more clarity on screen. And they've got some great examples. So let me just show you an example. Here are the indicators. Do you see what I'm doing? That animation you just saw is an example of an indicator. Let me show you how they get built. So in the indicator area, you've got kind of do-it-yourself kits where you can put together these indicators with all of the different components. But the one that I just used was this one here. I'm just going to drag it out onto the screen so you can see what it looks like. And here it is on the timeline. Now, when I play it, you see it's got a little circle, a little animation, the line comes up, and the text, and we can edit the text over here. It's that easy to choose any one of these different indicators and apply them to your video. So think about if you're showing a component and you're trying to draw people's eye to that exact screw that you're talking about as you're showing maybe an assembly process. This gives you total control and allows you to establish total clarity in delivering that content to your audience. And to have created an animation like this ourselves would have been a tremendous amount of time. Moving along, the channel kit contains a variety of assets primarily for YouTube creators, such as really flashy subscribe animations. Let's take a look. Oh, that's flashy, subscribe. Which reminds me, if you've not yet subscribed to this YouTube channel, now might be a good time to do it. There, I will take blatant advantage of that opportunity. It would take me a long time to go through all of these assets for you to show you the real value. But instead, let's just kind of breeze through them and I'll show you some highlights and then we'll get on to the other new features in Camtasia 2022. there are two other features or inclusions in the new assets, in the new asset libraries that I want to share with you. And I don't want to gloss over them. I want to dive into them a little bit deeper. And the first is the expected titles. Now, there are always, Camtasia is always shipped with a good collection of titles that you can use that are very serviceable. But I think they've really taken a step up with the new titles that are in here. All of these titles I think are significantly better than the ones that we've had before. They just seem more polished. They kind of seem more modern. So here we see a little bracketed title. Nothing too fancy, but the fact that we can modify each and every element in it to make it work for us, and the fact that it's got this nice clean design and this very modern look. I'm excited about using these new titles, and there are a lot of them. They've got all these broadcast titles too here. They call them broadcast titles. I don't know how they come up with the names, but they do look like they're coming from broadcast television. And they give us a lot of different options as far as really upping our game, even to the point of adding some really kind of uber creative artistic ones. Look at that. And that would take a long time to create yourself. Pretty darn good. Okay, so the titles, significant upgrade. The other big upgrade that they've done is they've added something called a UI kit. UI kit stands for User Interface Kit. Now, stay with me here for a moment. Content creators like myself often are displaying different devices on screen. We're showing an iPad screen or an iPhone screen or an Android phone screen or a computer screen on a notebook. And we want to be able to display, let people know that it's on the device. So what we've done in the past is we put frames around video that we've shot, and they have device frames inside of Camtasia that would make it look like it's an iPhone or an iPad or a notebook computer. And we could also put that against a kind of a motion background. So that does a good job of serving our needs to describe and showcase what's happening on a smartphone, for example. With the new UI kit, they've really upped the game, and they've changed the way that we do it. So take a look. This is a very cool thing. So let's show what would happen if we wanted to, say, put a show video from an iPhone, how to use an iPhone. So I'm going to drag the UI kit out onto the desktop or into the timeline here, and you can see that it's got the graphics of a iPhone. And this video here is just a placeholder video to tell us that we can put video in place. Now, in the past, we would have to marry a frame to our video and we would lay it over top, and it would work okay. But this is, I think it's just, they've really made it very usable in a whole new way. So what we do is we remove the placeholder, and instead we import a video file. Now we've got, I always am recording different iPhone screens. So on your smartphones or your tablets, you can just hit a record feature on the phone and you can record the screen on the fly. And then you can take that video and import it onto your desktop computer, and that's exactly what I've done. I go over here to my downloads folder. I've got down here, I just have to scroll down. There we are. I've got all sorts of different iPhone recordings that I've done in the past. When I import it, what it does is it imports it here into the frame itself. And this is becomes a single element. We see here on the timeline that it just shows us the iPhone screen itself. But if I hit play, it's showing the video that I recorded inside of the iPhone. So there it is. It's all just whatever I recorded on the iPhone itself. And it's completely scalable. We can move it around on the screen, put it over top of any background we want. So we have total control over this. It's almost as if we have the phone itself on the screen. I really like how they've incorporated these designs, and they don't just have iPhones in landscape and portrait mode, but they have other types of phones. They have tablets, they have computers. They have all of those features are now part of the UI kit as well. So overall, the new library in Camtasia 2022 is a delight, but you will spend a lot of time exploring all of the assets, and it'll fire your imagination of different ways, in different creative ways that you can tell stories in your own tutorial videos. Now, there are several other features that are included in Camtasia 2022 that we're not going to go into today. They've got a whole series of new transitions and also a new blending capability, which is more for more cinematic type production work and not necessarily for the kind of how-to and tutorial production work that we do. So we'll leave that to other people to explain better than me. But there is one last thing that I want to show you, and that is how we're dealing now with cursors. The cursor, moving the cursor around on the screen, is an important part of telling any story when you're showing how to use any piece of software. And we've always had some decent cursor control inside of Camtasia. Let me just bring in a quick little video clip here, a typical screencast. There we go. And we've always had this option here, which is cursor effects. Now, cursor effects allow us to do things like create a highlight around the cursor, or to animate the mouse clicks that happen when we do use a cursor. So let me just show you quickly. If we wanted to add a highlight around it, all you do is you take and drag that effect down over top of the clip. And now you see here inside of the video that the cursor has a highlight on it. Scroll along there so you see how it's got the little highlight, and you probably recognize that from different tutorial videos that you've seen before, and you can adjust the size of that, etc. You can also choose to include things like a rings that will pop around when the mouse is clicked. So if we play this along, when it's clicked, you see the little rings that radiate out from it when it's clicked. So that helps draw the viewer's eye to what's happening with the cursor and helps explain better what's happening during a scene. They've really upped the game as far as cursor control goes, and I'm still getting my head around this one as well. Over here in the properties menu, we on any screencast clip where we've recorded the screen and a cursor is included, we've always had the ability to adjust the size of the screen, but here we have a control that we've been able to manage the cursor, and basically we've been able to increase the size of the cursor, but it would pixelate as it got bigger because we were just basically increasing the size. They've changed that out now, and so that you can scale a cursor much larger and it'll still retain its visual integrity. Very, very exciting. But this button here, edit the cursor path, this will allow us to choose the path that the cursor is following in the demonstration. Watch what happens. We're going to continue. And you can see where we've moved the cursor in the time, and down here in the timeline, we see the different points in the cursor. So if we want to jump to this point here in the cursor, we can jump straight to those different points, and we can see exactly what's happening in each little segment that we're working with the cursor. So you can adjust and smooth out the path of the cursor, pause the cursor, and you can even edit where the cursor is going on the screen as you're editing any demo. So the kind of the very kind of minute control that we have over what the viewer's seeing, down to where the cursor's positioned on the screen, when it moves to the point, what happens when it clicks, the size of the cursor, adding a much higher quality cursor to be able to view. Well, those are game changers as far as us being able to really do a good job creating how-to and tutorial videos. And that's it. I'm not going to show you any other features. There are some other features, but I'll leave them for another time. So I have to ask you, which of these features, which of these benefits are most compelling to you? Which ones do you like the idea of? Is text-based video editing something that you can really get behind and get excited about? Is from a personal perspective, I'm looking forward to these new assets allowing me to create better quality and more compelling videos here at Dottotech, and the new editing techniques allowing me to produce them that much more effectively and efficiently. So I'm looking forward to really getting to know Camtasia 2022. I hope you found today's video to be useful. If you have, a like, a subscribe, and of course a share would all be greatly appreciated. A final thanks to our friends at TechSmith for sponsoring today's video, and links for everything are in the description below. With that, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and one last thought is every week here at Dottotech, we host a free tutorial webinar called Webinar Wednesday on some aspect of content creation or productivity. You are invited to join us. The webinars are free, and I think they're awesome. I would love to see you there. With that, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Steve Dotto. Have fun storming the castle.